Hello, I'm taking on a challenge to beat every playable Nintendo published game. Welcome to the next episode. The next game is The Mysterious Murasame Castle. This title was a Famicom Disk System exclusive that initially never left Japan, making it the first of a handful of FDS titles that never existed in a traditional cartridge format. Due to its lack of international popularity, Nintendo has not talked much about the game and not much is known about its development. The project was led by Nintendo R&D4, although in an interview, Suda51 has claimed that Human Entertainment assisted Nintendo with the development of this title. In the credits for the game, the programmers all use names that you can't find credited anywhere else. While these might have just been one-time developers, it's also entirely possible that these names were pseudonyms for human employees, which was not too uncommon at the time, especially in Japan. However, all we really have is Suda51's word on this, so who knows how involved Human actually was. Outside of Japan, most of us would come to know the game's protagonist, Takamaru, through his appearance in Smash Bros. Apparently, Sakurai had even considered adding Takamaru to both Melee and Smash 4, but ultimately he was not included due to his low relevance. Instead, he has had various cameo appearances throughout the series as a sticker, trophy, and even as an assist trophy, and this is where I personally first heard about his game. This isn't his only Western cameo appearance either, as he was a guest character in the Wii version of Samurai Warriors 3, and he even had an entire attraction based on his series in Nintendo Land. Many years later, the game would see its first Western release on the 3DS eShop in 2014, and would later go on to be released as part of the Switch Online service in 2023. Something else interesting about this game was that a one-shot live-action TV drama was created based on the game. It was made as an early collaboration between Nintendo and Fuji TV, a television network we'll see more of in the future. As far as I can tell, this drama was the first ever live-action TV depiction of a video game, although there was already an animated Mario movie that was released a few months prior. Alright, with that out of the way, let's take a look at my time with the game. I've played this one before on the 3DS eShop, although near the end I used save states to get through the final levels. This time, I wanted to beat the game without using save states at all. I can't read Japanese, so I'm trusting the internet for the story on this one. In Edo period Japan, a castle known as the Murasame Castle holds a gigantic statue named Murasame. On a stormy night, an alien creature descended into the castle and possessed the statue. The alien used its new body to take over the castle, and it corrupted the 4 neighboring castles by giving each lord an evil sphere of power. Murasame and the corrupted lord sent ninja armies and monsters to attack the villages. Tokugawa Ieyatsuna, a real-world shogun who ruled during this time, sent Takamaru, a samurai apprentice, on a secret mission to infiltrate the castles. As the game starts, you can see the 5 castles in the top right, and I am starting at Aosame Castle. This game is a top-down action game, and in the first stage you make your way through the castle outskirts. With each attack, you throw out some sort of throwing knife, and if you attack while up close, you'll swing your sword, which I believe does more damage. You can also block enemy throwing stars by swinging when the projectiles draw close to you. While these levels have an ending and a general path you need to follow, the stages are semi-open, with branching paths and various secrets to find. There are items spread out throughout the levels, and these usually take one of 2 forms: tanukis and gift boxes. These things are apparently tanukis, and they drop special weapons. Some of these tanukis are out in the open like this, but some require you to find them by walking over certain spots. The tanukis will drop either an upgrade to the throwing knives or a special technique that can be used 3 times before running out. The 2 types of weapon upgrades are fireballs and windmill swords. The fireballs are much stronger than the normal knives, while the windmill swords travel much further. You can only have one of these at a time though, and I generally prefer the fireballs. Using these special weapons will consume scrolls though, and if you run out, you'll throw regular knives again. However, these scrolls can be refilled by drops from enemies. The other type of tanuki drops, special techniques, can be one of 2 different moves: lightning and some sort of scroll. The lightning destroys everything on screen, while the scroll turns Takamaru invisible for a few seconds, rendering him impervious to attacks. The lightning is obviously the more useful of the 2, but the scroll still has its uses. The other type of upgrades are given by gift boxes. These gift boxes are similar to the invisible tanukis in that they are hidden until you walk over them. They are hidden all over the levels, and they give some pretty good items too. There are shoes that increase your speed, shoes that let you walk faster on water, a bow that increases your throwing speed, another bow that increases how many projectiles you can have on the screen at a time, and shogi pieces that allow you to fire multiple shots at once. These upgrades all go away whenever you lose a life, so you'll likely have to regain these constantly. There are actually 3 different types of shogi pieces too, each with a different effect. One splits your shot in all 4 directions, which is what Takamaru's attack in Smash Bros. Is based on. Another one splits your shot in 3 directions in front of you, and the final shogi piece has you shoot 3 projectiles all in the same direction. Similar to the weapon style upgrades, you can only have one of these at a time, and personally, I didn't like the one that splits your shot into 4 all that much. I mostly just used the other 2. The 3 split was my favorite for navigating the stages, while the single upgrade attack was really useful for hard enemies. In particular, the concentrated single direction attack combined with the fireballs could defeat bosses extremely fast. In addition to these upgrades, sometimes a life refill will pop out of these gifts too, as well as a samurai helm which will make you temporarily invincible. If you haven't figured it out yet, this game is extremely hectic. Ninjas are flying everywhere, and you constantly need to keep moving and swinging to keep up. The first level isn't too bad, but it will get more hectic later on. The first level has standard ninjas that are dressed in black, and occasionally white ninjas will pop out of the water to attack. I eventually encountered a room where this big dude appeared and started chucking bombs at me. These bombs can actually be pretty hard to dodge, but thankfully I got through this one easily. There was another one of these guys at the end of the level too, and while it was a little scary since I only had 1 health remaining, I managed to beat him and clear the first stage. After each castle exterior level, you have a chance to earn some extra lives. 4 tanuki will line up, and 3 of them contain lives while 1 contains nothing. Basically, you just keep getting lives from them until you find the empty tanuki, which will cause all the others to leave. On the topic of lives, this game does have a limited amount of lives, but getting a game over isn't too bad. Each level has checkpoints, and getting a game over will just remove the checkpoints and send you back to the start of the stage. After each exterior stage is an interior stage, so next up is the inside of Aosame Castle. This stage has some new enemies, such as the red ninjas, which can shoot fireballs, and these guys that walk sideways and hold out their sword defensively. Each castle also has a variation of the black ninjas that wear a unique color for each castle. This first castle has blue ninjas. In each castle, you can find daughters of the noblemen who have been captured. Rescuing them grants you an extra life, although sometimes they are fake and they are revealed to be an angry spirit instead. It's completely random if the princess is real or fake, and it can even be different in the same location after you reset the stage when losing a life. Throughout each of these castle stages, you'll encounter these rooms where you see the lord running away and locking the door. You then have to deal with these annoying enemies that shoot lightning at you. This first room is not all that hard, but later on they add more enemies and make the walls shoot fireballs at you. Man, getting through these later versions unscathed can be tough. Finally, after some time, I made my way to the first boss. This guy just throws tons of bombs at you. His moveset is simple, but he's honestly pretty tough, as the big explosions can be hard to dodge. I pretty quickly lost a life here, but thankfully the game gives you checkpoints at each boss. I didn't realize it at first, but I think the damage you deal to the boss carries over across each life. After losing almost half my lives to this guy, I took him out and obtained the sphere that corrupted him. Up next was Akasame Castle, and some more enemies are introduced here. The first of these I saw was flashing ninjas, which explode if they get close to you. There's also this weird enemy that can turn into a tornado and shoot tornadoes out at you. I think he's supposed to be a Tengu? I also encountered a variation of the guys that chuck bombs at you, and these guys shoot fire out of their mouths instead. Honestly though, the fire was easier to deal with than the bombs. The game was starting to get pretty hectic, but I made my way to the castle with some extra lives still remaining. The ninjas in this castle are red, not to be confused with the red ninjas that look exactly the same but shoot fireballs. This castle also introduces these guys that spin a spear around. They're pretty aggressive, and the first one kinda messed me up. Whoa! That guy just ran me over! There's also invisible ninjas now, although since you can still see their shadows, they're honestly not all that different from the normal ninjas. Eventually, I reached the boss, and this guy is basically a worse version of the previous one. He throws bombs too, but now they explode into ninjas for some reason, making the boss super hectic. You can also turn invisible, but honestly, I didn't mind it that much, because when he did this, he didn't attack, which gave me an opportunity to get close. I beat the boss with 0 extra lives remaining. Phew, I barely made it. Next up is Ryokusame Castle, and this is where things really started to get tough, as at this point I started to get game overs. In this level, there's a new type of big enemy that can burrow into the ground and pop out anywhere. There's also these new cliff sections where a bunch of unique enemies swarm the screen. This level took me a few tries, but I eventually managed to beat it. The interior of Ryokusame Castle has green ninjas this time, which thankfully don't overlap with another type of ninja. This level introduces these really nasty guys that are protected by a shield of fireballs. They can shoot projectiles at you, and if you fail to time your shots right, your attacks will get blocked by the fireballs. I got quite a few game overs here, and I started to learn what the best route was for me to take after doing it so many times. I eventually reached the boss, which was a guy that had a bunch of fake clones that will shoot fireballs at you. You have to hit the right one to actually damage him, and I failed miserably during our first encounter. I got a game over and had to start at the beginning of the castle. However, during my next encounter with him, I used that triple concentrated fireball setup and cooked him. Up next was the last castle, Momosame Castle. Somehow, I actually did pretty good on the exterior of this one. I beat it on my first try, although it was super close. However, I was not ready for the difficulty of the castle's interior. The color scheme of this castle's ninjas is pink, and there's one more new type of enemy here, but they're basically identical to the guys that chuck bombs from the exterior levels. Man, this one was so tough. I got game over after game over here. In this level, I finally learned something important though. Every gift will respawn when you leave and re-enter a room, which meant that I could return to previous spots with healing items after difficult rooms. While the ninjas will always spawn regardless, any large enemies you defeat won't come back, so I could do this as much as I wanted as long as I didn't run out of time. The boss of this castle was super tough too. This boss shoots these pink explosives at you, and when they burst, pieces of it go flying in every direction. The way this explosion came out made it so hard to hit her safely. It was hard to dodge, and if any of your projectiles hit any part of the explosion, it vanishes. I died to her over and over, and because of this stage's overall difficulty, I ended up doing this level so many times. I tried all kinds of strats, such as switching to the windmill source to hit her from far away, and even running away every time my life got low to get some more life. The eventual strat that worked though kinda caught me off guard with how effective it was. I used the scroll to sneak up close to her, then I just spammed fireballs at her. This worked incredibly well, and she went down in a matter of seconds. Up next was the final level, the Murasame Castle. This castle only has one stage, but it is a doozy. All the enemies are completely new here, and there are some tough ones. The ninjas have all been replaced by these little dudes with horns. They are apparently called jockey, and from my limited understanding of Japanese culture, these guys are demons who were once evil but repented after being trampled on by the 4 heavenly kings. I guess they went back to their old ways under the rule of Murasame though. There's also new variations of the large enemies that chuck bombs and fire at you, and each bomb now bursts into a jockey. Great. The final new enemies here are the bridge guards, which must be destroyed to proceed in certain rooms. They shoot tons of projectiles in all directions, but somehow they honestly aren't all that hard to defeat. I lost a lot on this stage. The layouts of the rooms are tough, and the overall difficulty of the enemies make it hard to get through. The hardest part though was the boss himself. This boss is the Murasame statue, and he just stands still and launches 2 types of projectiles at you. Both of these explode like the bombs, and one of them will shoot out 3 projectiles towards you when they hit the walls. This moveset isn't that complicated, but it's really hard to consistently dodge everything. The first time I encountered him, I didn't even damage him once, and I got a game over. On the next run, I finally realized that you need to shoot a projectile into his head to damage him. The problem with this was that his projectiles blocked your attacks, and they spawn right in front of his head. To make matters worse, getting close enough to actually hit him puts you at a huge risk too. I died to this guy quite a bit, and with each game over, I had to do the whole stage over again. My eventual strat was to use the shogi piece that split my shot into 3, since it allowed me to hit him from more angles. After many tries, I finally beat him. With the Murasame statue conquered, Takamaru had finally accomplished his goal. Or had he? The game doesn't end, and an opening appears at the bottom of the statue. The game's not actually over yet, and you need to climb into the statue to continue. In here, there's a brief linear section where projectiles are being fired at you from the walls. After going through a few rooms, you find the true final boss, the alien that was possessing the statue. This boss was super hectic. He breathes fire and shoots bombs at you, all while those projectiles from the walls are still shooting at you. You have to hit his face to actually damage him, which is constantly moving back and forth. I remember this being super tough when I first played it, and I used save states liberally to make it through the fight. This time though, I was doing it legit. What really scared me during this boss was that I had a pretty good set of power-ups, and losing even 1 life would mean I would lose them all. I managed to get a bunch of hits on him, but I lost 2 points of HP to the bombs, meaning I only had 1 life left. I became nervous, but I locked in. Somehow, I did it. I beat the final boss on my very first try. Phew, what a relief. After beating the boss, the game flashes the screen like crazy, and the orbs fly back into the sky. Wait a minute, does that mean he escaped? If only this game had a sequel. Anyway, for some reason, Ode to Joy is playing here, and the game congratulates me for beating it. With that, the Mysterious Murasame Castle was complete. On to the review. I thought this one was pretty fun. I see a lot of people compare it to The Legend of Zelda, but I don't think that's entirely fair. At its core, this game is a fast-paced action game, and while there is some level of exploration, it's still a game with individual levels, with each having an ending you're pushing towards. That's not to say it's worse because of this. In fact, I like that this game is different from some of the others. The game is fast-paced and non-stop action, so it always keeps you on the edge of your seat. That being said, the later levels got a bit too hectic for my taste, and it got pretty repetitive having to do some of those later levels over and over. I did enjoy the game quite a bit though, so I gave the game an 8 out of 10. This is one that I think would be really cool to see a revival of on modern hardware. Thanks for watching the video. If you want to see more of these in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you won't miss out on the next one. Also leave a like if you enjoyed it, since it will help the channel grow and motivate me to continue this series. I hope I will see you in the next step of my quest to beat every Nintendo game.